Hi, I'm Shelly Young, owner of the Chopping Block, and today I'm going to teach you how to make dinner rolls. This recipe is one of my favorites, and we've been teaching at the Chopping Block for a long time. This is an Iowa blue ribbon winning recipe, so I think you're going to love it. The first step in making any kind of yeast bread is to proof the yeast. What I have in this bowl is a little bit of sugar. You have to think yeast is something that's been sleeping for a long time. We want to wake it up. How we wake it up is give it something to eat. I know I'd be hungry if I was just waking up. Quarter cup of warm water. You want the water to be between 110 and 115 degrees. And we have a tablespoon of dry active yeast. Just sprinkle that on the top. The temperature of the water is really important, so I recommend taking the temperature of it. If it's too hot, you'll kill it. If it's not hot enough, it won't activate. We're going to let that set for a minute. The next step in this recipe is we're going to take a cup of milk. This is whole milk. I like it because it has lots of fat in it. I'm going to put that in a stock pot, a little saucepan. If you have skim milk, that's fine to use also. This recipe has 6 tablespoons of sugar. It has 1 tablespoon of salt. It has 4 tablespoons of unsalted butter and 2 tablespoons of shortening. I'm going to put these all in a saucepan. I'm going to turn the heat on low, and I'm going to let that, the fat, the shortening, the butter melt. Our milk is warm. It has the melted shortening. It has the butter, the sugar, and the salt in there. So it's just warm. Now, this is a hot mixture. So what I want to do next is I'm going to add 3/4 cup of cold water. That helps to cool that mixture down. If I were to put my yeast right in there, it would actually kill the yeast. You want to be careful with that. So I add the cold water, and I want to show you what the yeast looks like when it's ready. It's a little hard to see here, but I imagine if you poured a beer, if you've ever seen one of those, that frothy head, that's what the yeast will look like when it's proof. Now I want to show you this, but I'm going to add the flour as the next step because I want to ensure that that yeast doesn't get killed. I don't want to pour it right on top of that hot liquid, even though I've added that cold water. The secret to this recipe, and why I think it's so delicious, is it has all the elements that make a dinner roll delicious. Number 1 is that it has a combination of all-purpose white flour. I've added 2½ cups of all-purpose white flour. It also has bread flour. So I'm adding 2½ cups of bread flour to start. I may need a little bit more, which is why there's more in this bowl. It has a good amount of fat. If you look at all-purpose flour, it doesn't have a lot of flavor. So we've added sugar, we've added a good amount of salt, we've added fat that gives its texture. The 2 types of flour also improve the texture of the rolls and add a lot of flavor. I'm adding my yeast last. I have a stand mixer, lucky me, so I'm going to turn it on and I'm going to start to process this. If it needs a little more flour, if it looks really sticky and wet, I'll add more, and we're going to knead it for about 8 minutes in this machine. If I do it by hand, I do it about the same amount of time. This dough looks a bit sticky for me, so I'm going to add a little more flour. So the rolled dough is smooth and elastic. It has a little bit of stickiness to it. That's fine. This dough is nice and soft. So don't worry about that. I'm going to leave it in the bowl that I actually kneaded it in. Why dirty another bowl? I'm going to cover this with a towel, let it set at a room temperature between 68 and 72 degrees. So our dinner roll dough is gone through its first proofing. I know it's ready to go because when I push the roll mixture, it doesn't pop all the way back up. That's how we know it's ready to go. It's a little over double in volume. I've got a high-sided baking dish that I'm going to put the rolls in, and this has been spread with butter. I use melted butter because I think it's easier. What I'm going to do here is pull the dough out, and I just take the dough like so. And squeeze off the piece. Make it smooth on the top and just take your hand like so. Another technique you can do, this takes a little hand strength to squeeze those rolls like I did. You can also take, and you could simply cut them in pieces like this. People will love it. But if you just take a piece like this and roll it, form your hand like this, no flour on the board, and just move the dough around in here, you can also get a really nicely shaped roll. These are relatively tight in here. If you want your rolls to be crunchier, spread them more apart, get more crunchy sides. I like mine a little bit closer together so they get stuck together and there's lots of soft sides and a crunchy top. I cover this with a dish towel. We're gonna let these double in size. So our dinner rolls are ready to go in the oven. How I know they are ready to go in is just like the dough was when we proofed it the first time. When I push on the rolls, they're not bouncing back. I brush them with a little bit of butter. They're going to go in the oven at 350 degrees for about 50 minutes. So I'm going to check to see if they're done. And what I'm going to use to tell most accurately that they're done is my meat thermometer. I think this is one of the best uses ever for a meat thermometer. Bread is done when the internal temperature is 200 degrees. So there's no guessing, so it's perfect. And we are just a little over 200, and that's okay, but I think that is how you make dinner rolls.